The Deep Space Research Station usually slept at night. Its long metal halls were quiet, almost too quiet, like the whole place was holding its breath. Only a few dim lights remained on, glowing a soft blue that barely touched the edges of the walls. Captain Elias Ward liked these hours. They made him feel calm, far from the noise of politics and the expectations of being a human representative among many alien races. He was preparing to sleep when it happened, a knock. A small, delicate sound. Too gentle to be human. Elias froze. No one visited officers at midnight, and certainly not with a knock like that. He opened the door. Standing there was Queen of, ruler of one of the most powerful and feared alien empires in the galaxy. She was tall, elegant, and carried an otherworldly glow that always made humans stare. Her silver blue skin shimmered faintly under the corridor lights, and her four crystal-like eyes usually held the cold confidence of a ruler. But tonight, she looked nothing like a queen. Her head was slightly bowed, her shoulders were slumped, her breathing was uneven, almost trembling. Strange dust clung to her arms, neck, and the edges of her armor, an irritating spore cloud they had passed through earlier during their diplomatic tour. Elias had assumed it was harmless, but clearly it affected her more than she had admitted. For a long moment said nothing. She shifted uncomfortably, her fingers twisting the fabric of her cloak. Elias had never seen a queen nervous, let alone unsure. Then she spoke, barely above a whisper. "Human," she said softly, may I use the shower in your room?" Elias blinked. "My shower." Her eyes lowered further, the silver glow in them dimming with embarrassment. "I cannot return to my quarters like this," she murmured. "My guards would see, they would assume weakness, they would report it to the council." Elias looked at her again, this time not as a queen, but as someone tired, worn, and fighting a storm alone. He understood then this was not about hygiene. This was about dignity, about fear, about needing a moment where she did not have to be perfect. "Of course," he said gently, stepping aside. "Come in." Hesitated at the doorway, she glanced left then right, making sure no one was watching. For a queen who commanded fleets and armies, she looked strangely small in that moment. Finally, after a quiet breath, she entered his room, closing the door behind her with care. Elias noticed the way she kept her eyes on the floor. Queens were trained from childhood to show no vulnerability. Shame, discomfort, fear, those emotions were not allowed. They were considered signs of a weak leader. But tonight had come here because she could not hide them anymore. The room felt warmer with her inside, not because of the temperature, but because of the emotion she carried with her, raw, fragile real. Stood near the corner, hugging herself as if trying to hold all her pain in one place. Elias approached slowly, careful not to startle her. "You okay?" he asked softly. Her voice cracked as she tried to answer. The spores, they cause irritation on skin, painful, burning irritation, and emotional instability. Elias had never heard her talk like that, not even during intense negotiations. She looked up at him. Her eyes were shining, almost wet, though did not cry the way humans did. "I did not want anyone to see me like this," she admitted. "Not my guards, not my council, not my people." Her fear wasn't of pain. Her fear was of being seen as flawed. Elias nodded in understanding. "You're safe here," he said. "No one will see, no one will judge." Her shoulders relaxed slightly, as if those simple words lifted something heavy from her. Elias gestured to the small shower stall in the corner of his room. "You can use it as long as you need," he said. Stepped toward it, then paused. Her voice, soft and trembling, floated through the quiet room. "Thank you, human," she whispered, "for opening your door at midnight when I had nowhere else to go." Elias watched her disappear into the shower, and he realized something he had never felt on any mission before. The most powerful queen in the galaxy wasn't fearless. She was lonely. And tonight she had chosen his door to knock on. The warm steam of the shower filled the tiny room. Its sound was gentle, almost hypnotic, yet it carried with it a strange, vulnerable silence. Queen stood beneath the cascade of water, her silver skin catching faint light from the small overhead lamp. Every droplet seemed to wash away not only the dust and spores from the spore cloud, but also the rigid control she carried over centuries. For the first time in years, she felt exposed, not as a ruler, but as herself. Elias sat on the edge of his bunk, careful not to intrude, yet close enough to respond if needed. He watched quietly as the queen moved with a grace that was both alien and painfully human in its fragility. The usually commanding aura that surrounded her was softened, replaced by an almost childlike uncertainty. It was a side of her no one had ever seen, not her council, not the ambassadors, not even her closest advisors. After a long pause, spoke, her voice barely audible over the rushing water. You know, she said, almost to herself, I have 12 private bathing chambers in my palace. 12. She let out a quiet, humorless laugh, and none of them feel safe, none of them feel like home. Elias shifted, curious. Safe from what? He asked gently. From myself, she replied, her words trembling. From their eyes, from the judgment of those who must always obey me. She stepped out of the shower slightly, letting the warm steam rise around her like a protective veil. A queen must never look weak, must never show fear, must never, Gods forgive me, must never appear mortal. Elias swallowed. You are allowed to be mortal, he said simply. Her laugh was soft, tinged with sadness. Not on, she whispered, not as a queen, not ever. For a moment silence filled the room, heavy but comforting. The queen sat on the edge of the shower stall, knees drawn to her chest as though trying to protect herself from the world. The vulnerability in her posture was striking. Elias had always known she carried the weight of a galaxy on her shoulders, but seeing her like this made him realize just how heavy that burden truly was. I envy humans sometimes, she admitted, her voice almost a whisper. You may fall, you may fail, you may cry or laugh or scream, and no one questions it. You are not punished for your weakness, you simply are. Elias nodded slowly, unsure if he could ever truly explain human resilience. We try to live with honesty, to face what comes without hiding. His glowing eyes softened. You speak as if you know me, she murmured, as if you see beyond the crown, beyond the title, beyond me. Her throat fluttered, a sign of hesitation, discomfort, and fear all at once. You do not look away. You do not treat me like I am untouchable or frightening. You treat me as, she searched for the human word, as a person. Elias felt warmth spread in his chest. You are a person, he said gently. The crown doesn't change that. For the first time, allowed herself a breath that sounded like relief. Her stiff, precise posture softened. The tension in her shoulders seemed to melt into the steam-filled air. She had not expected kindness here, not at midnight, not in a human, small, simple room. Yet it came quiet, patient, and real. I have not allowed anyone to see me like this for centuries, she admitted, voice low, almost ashamed. I have been alone in my weakness, hiding it behind gold and armor, behind ceremonies and loyalty. But here, with you, I can be not queen, I can simply exist. Elias didn't know what to say. Words felt insufficient for a moment like this, a bridge between two lives so different yet so close. So he simply nodded, keeping his presence steady, silent, offering space without expectation. She laughed again, softly, almost in disbelief. I came here to ask for something as small as a shower, and yet it has become more. Her eyes flicked up to him, shimmering with an emotion Elias could not name, relief, fear, and gratitude all at once. Sometimes, she said slowly, the smallest act of trust can feel bigger than any throne. The words lingered in the warm air. Elias looked at her, seeing not a queen, not a ruler feared by galaxies, but a living, breathing being capable of doubt, fear, and hope. For a long moment, the galaxy outside, the wars, the politics, the ceremonies did not exist. There was only this room, only this quiet, only the simple truth of two beings connecting. And for the first time in his life, Elias realized that a queen could be lonely not because of a lack of power, but because no one dared to see her as she truly was. Closed her eyes, leaning back against the wall of the shower stall. Perhaps, she whispered, almost to herself, a human is the only creature in the galaxy who could ever see me like this and still remain. Elias, watching silently, understood then that this night, this shared vulnerability, was the beginning of something extraordinary, something no crown, no army, and no empire could ever create. And somewhere deep inside, he felt the stirring of a bond that could change both their worlds forever. The shower hummed softly, water spilling in warm, steady streams. Steam curled upward, filling the small room like a cloud of quiet comfort. Queen remained under the spray, her eyes half closed, lost in a world that belonged only to her. The spore dust clinging to her skin burned and stung, but that was not her greatest discomfort. It was the solitude she carried, the relentless weight of centuries of rule, of expectation, of perfection. Elias sat quietly on the edge of the bunk, careful not to make a sound. He could have left the room, could have given her complete privacy, but something told him she needed the silence more than she needed the walls of solitude. He kept his back turned, yet his presence filled the room like a shield. "You humans are strange," whispered through the hiss of water, her four crystalline eyes still fixed on the floor. "You carry so little fear of one another. You speak to strangers. You help them even when you are uncertain, even when it is inconvenient. Why?" Elias shifted, curious. "Because sometimes," he said slowly, "help is the only thing that matters. Not rank, not fear, not pride, only what someone needs." A soft pause followed, the kind that only the quietest moments in life can hold. Tilted her head back under the water, letting it fall over her face and shoulders. "I do not know what it is like to be without judgment, to be without eyes always watching, analyzing, measuring, expecting. Humans do not see me as queen, you see me as," she hesitated, "someone real." Elias felt warmth crawl along his chest. "You are real," he said softly. "The crown and the armor don't change that. They do not make you less human, if you wish to call it that." Her throat made a small, quivering sound, a sign of emotion. She was not crying, but she was close. For a being who had lived centuries under scrutiny, every word, every gesture was calculated. Yet here, under warm water in a human's tiny room, was untethered, fragile, and honest. "I am tired of pretending," she admitted. "Tired of strength when I feel fear. Tired of dignity when my body aches. Tired of smiling when I want to scream. And yet the galaxy expects me to carry all of this alone, as if loneliness were a crown itself." Elias watched her, feeling a strange mixture of awe and sadness. He had faced countless battles, negotiated treaties under threat of war, and stared into the void of space countless times, but he had never felt the weight of a galaxy on someone's shoulders, never seen someone so powerful and yet so small under the pressure of expectation. "You are allowed to feel," he said quietly. "Not everything must be a performance. Not everything must be strength. Sometimes the bravest act is simply to be honest with yourself." Tilted her head, her wet hair clinging to her neck. "Honest," she repeated, testing the word like a treasure long forgotten. "To show weakness, to ask for help, to let someone see me as more than a title," she swallowed, her voice barely audible over the shower. "It feels like betraying everything I am supposed to be." "You are not betraying anything," Elias said firmly. "You are proving you are strong enough to be human, strong enough to let someone in." A long silence followed, broken only by the soft splashes of water on the tile. And then, softly, unexpectedly, a sound escaped her lips, a shaky, almost childlike breath that seemed to hold both relief and fear. Elias did not move, he did not speak. He let her have the moment, letting her understand in her own time that the trust she had offered him was sacred and rare. "You do not fear me," she whispered finally, almost a question. "Not the way others do. You do not see a weapon or a queen to be obeyed, you see me." "You are more than a queen," Elias said gently. "You are a person who deserves kindness, care, and respect. Nothing more, nothing less." His head fell forward, her eyes closing fully under the warm rush of water. "Perhaps," she murmured, "this is what I have wanted for centuries, a moment of freedom, a moment where I am not queen, but simply just me." The words hung in the steam-filled air. Elias felt the gravity of them. This moment was not just about water and cleansing, it was about trust, vulnerability, and recognition. The most powerful ruler in the galaxy had chosen to let her walls fall. She had chosen to reveal herself to a human. And in that quiet, humid room, between the hiss of water and the glow of her silver-blue skin, something changed. Not in politics, not in armies, not in empires, but between two beings who had, against all expectation, found a connection that could not be measured in treaties or technology. Breath deeply, finally allowing herself a small smile, not for the galaxy, not for her guards, not for appearances, but for herself. For the first time in a long, long time, she was free. Elias, watching silently, understood that the bond forming here was more important than any council decision, more powerful than any fleet. It was something raw, rare, and human. And somewhere deep inside, he knew, this night would change both their lives forever. The warm mist from the shower had begun to settle, leaving the room soft and quiet, as though the universe itself had slowed down to listen. Wrapped in one of Elias' oversized towels, sat on the edge of his bunk. Her silver-blue skin still shimmered faintly, and her eyes, though tired, held a vulnerability Elias had never seen before. In that small room, the weight of centuries seemed to shrink. The empire, the fleets, the endless duties, all of it felt far away. Elias sat beside her, careful to maintain distance, yet close enough to offer reassurance. The silence was comfortable. It was not empty, it was alive, filled with unspoken words and shared understanding. Human, began, her voice quiet but steady, do you know why I came to your room tonight? Elias shook his head, curious. You would think a queen of, she said, her words heavy with centuries of expectation, could rely on her guards, her council, even her fleet. But it is not enough, not when the burden of rule makes even the air around you heavy, not when every glance is calculated, every gesture weighed. She paused, looking at him directly. I came to you because you see me differently. Elias felt his heart tighten. Differently how? He asked softly. You see me as, she whispered, not as a ruler, not as the queen. You do not expect me to be flawless. You do not fear me. You treat me as someone who can be real. He nodded slowly, understanding what she was saying. The empire was built on fear, respect, and strict obedience. No one, not even the bravest human diplomat, had dared to treat her as a person, and yet here she was, letting herself speak openly in his small, simple room. I have lived centuries in expectation, continued, her voice trembling just slightly. Every action I take is measured against the standards of my people. Every word is weighed for diplomacy. Every glance is scrutinized. There has never been a moment where I could simply exist without judgment. Elias reached out carefully, placing a hand near hers, but not touching, only offering presence. Then maybe that's what you need sometimes, a place where no one judges you, a moment where you can just be. Her eyes softened, glimmering in the dim light. Yes, she whispered, a moment where I am not a legend, not a queen feared across galaxies, not a symbol of power, just. Elias let her words settle. The honesty in her voice, the trust in her eyes made the room feel sacred. He understood now that this night was not about showers or spores. It was about something far deeper, trust, courage, and connection. You've allowed me something I have not known for centuries, said, voice almost breaking. Someone to see me as I am, not as I must be, and yet it frightens me. I am not used to giving myself so freely. You don't have to be used to it, Elias said gently. You are allowed to be afraid. You are allowed to need someone. Her gaze held his, searching, almost desperate. Humans are strange, she murmured, a faint smile touching her lips. You do not flinch at a queen's fears. You do not step back from her vulnerability. You remain. I remain because you're worth it, Elias replied simply, the words honest and steady. Because no crown, no fleet, no empire should ever make you feel alone. A long silence followed, leaned back slightly, letting the towel fall loosely over her legs. The glow of her skin and the shimmer of her eyes reflected a moment of fragile peace. For the first time in her long life, she felt safe, truly safe, not because of guards or walls, but because of trust. Tonight, she whispered almost to herself, I am not queen, I am, and no one has ever allowed me this. Elias smiled softly, a quiet warmth in his eyes. Then let this be your moment, you've earned it. Her hand twitched, reaching slightly toward him but stopping short. The gesture was small, almost imperceptible, yet it spoke volumes. She wanted connection but feared overstepping. He did not move, he let her decide. Finally laughed, a soft, low, almost musical sound. It was not the laughter of a queen performing for an audience. It was real. She let the sound linger in the room, filling the air with relief, release, and the fragile beginnings of trust. You are a remarkable human, she said, her voice softer than the night itself, for seeing me, for staying with me, for letting me be. Elias chuckled lightly, shaking his head. I just listened, he said, though he knew it was more than that. She looked at him, eyes gleaming in the soft lamplight. Listening is more than most have ever done for me, she admitted, and sometimes listening is all that a queen truly needs. The quiet room seemed to hold them, wrapping them in warmth beyond the shower, beyond the empire, beyond the galaxy. For the first time, felt something she had not known for centuries, connection, not fear, not duty, not admiration, connection. And in that moment, Elias understood too, this night, this trust, and this fragile bond would change everything. For a human captain and an alien queen, the galaxy outside could remain cold and distant, but inside that small room, the universe had shifted. They were no longer ruler and subject. They were two beings who had dared to trust, dared to feel, and dared to be real. And that was the most powerful act of all. The quiet of the night was shattered by the sudden, piercing alarm. Red lights flashed across the metallic corridors of the station, reflecting in the darkened windows. The soft hum of machinery seemed to accelerate, as if the very walls were panicking. Froze, the warm security of Elia's room vanished instantly. She wrapped the towel around her shoulders and stepped toward the door, her crystalline eyes flaring with instinctive command. The spores, she whispered, voice tense. One of my guards, he must have been exposed. He will not think clearly. The spores affect the mind. They will attack anything they see as a threat. Elia stood immediately, heart pounding. Then we need to find him, fast. No, said sharply, her voice trembling with something she had not shown before, fear for her people. This is my failure. I cannot allow him to endanger others. I will handle it myself. You are still recovering, Elias countered. You're vulnerable. You shouldn't face him alone. Sighs softened for a moment, revealing the human side of her that she had shared only with him. I cannot appear weak, not even now. My guards must see me as unshakable. They must see a queen who stands tall, no matter the danger. Elias placed a steady hand on the edge of the doorframe, and they will, but they will also see courage in teamwork, in allowing someone to help. Even a queen doesn't have to do everything alone. Her gaze held his, searching, almost pleading. Finally, she nodded. She understood, in the same quiet way she had understood everything about him tonight, that human courage was different. It did not demand perfection, only action. Together, they moved into the corridor, the red alarm casting harsh shadows across their faces. The hum of machinery and the distant clattering of disoriented crew members filled the air, making the station feel alive and dangerous. Every step brought tension, yet Elias felt something stronger beneath it, the unspoken trust between them. They found the guard in the hangar. He was large, his armor twisted, his movements erratic. His eyes, once loyal and steady, were wild with confusion. The spores had taken hold. He raised his staff, swinging it blindly, striking at the walls, the machinery, anything that moved. Stepped forward, her posture calm but tense. She called softly, "Look at me, hear me." But the guard's reaction was violent. The staff swung toward her in a wide, uncontrolled arc. Elias reacted instantly, catching it mid-swing and forcing it down to the floor. Sparks flew where metal met metal, and the guard roared in frustration, unable to distinguish friend from foe. "Let me try," demanded, her voice strong despite the fear in her eyes. Elias hesitated, then released his hold. He had seen her lead armies, make impossible decisions, and command loyalty in the most extreme situations. But now he saw her act not as a queen of, but as someone human, someone compassionate, someone willing to risk herself for another. She stepped closer to, keeping her voice calm, steady, soft. She whispered, placing her forehead gently against his, "You have guarded me since you were a child. You know my voice. Come back to me." The guard's wild movements faltered. His staff slipped from his grasp, clattering to the floor. The storm of spores in his mind seemed to weaken under her voice, under her courage, under the bond they had shared for decades. Held him there, whispering words Elias could barely hear, letting the trust between queen and guard overcome the alien poison that threatened to destroy him. Slowly, breathing steadied. His wild eyes softened, his trembling reduced, and finally the spore's influence receded enough for him to recognize her. Sagged, exhausted, Elias caught her before she could fall, supporting her as she leaned against him. The warmth of her trust, the bravery she had shown, and the raw vulnerability she had revealed made his heart swell with admiration. "Thank you," she whispered, voice barely audible, "for staying, for letting me do this with someone by my side." "You didn't need me to do it," Elias said softly. "You were never alone. You just needed to see that sometimes it's okay to let someone share the weight with you." She looked at him, eyes shining, not with the glare of command or fearsome authority, but with something far rarer, grateful recognition. She was a queen, yes, but tonight she had been human, vulnerable, courageous, compassionate. And Elias realized, as he led her away from the hangar and the danger, that this was what humanity could offer the galaxy. Not the largest fleet, not the sharpest weapon, not the coldest calculation, but the courage to feel, to trust, and to act with heart when all seemed lost. For a human and an alien queen, this night had become more than survival. It was proof that even the most feared, the most distant, the most perfect could be touched by human courage. And in that proof lay something stronger than any empire, connection. The hangar was quiet now, the alarms silenced, and the wounded guard secured by medical personnel. The red flashing lights had faded, leaving only the soft hum of the station machinery and the distant thrum of engines. Outside, the galaxy continued its endless spin, oblivious to the events that had just unfolded within the station walls. Walked beside Elias, her towel replaced by a loose robe from the infirmary, her shoulders still tense from adrenaline. For a ruler who had spent centuries projecting power, command, and unflinching authority, every step felt different tonight, lighter in some ways, heavier in others. She had faced a crisis and survived, yes, but she had survived with the help of a human. That thought alone was both humbling and profoundly unsettling. You handled him well, Elias said quietly, breaking the silence. Not just the guard, but yourself. His gaze remained on the floor. I am not accustomed to relying on others, she admitted softly. I have been trained to lead, to decide, to protect, and to endure alone. Asking for help, allowing someone to share the burden, it feels unnatural. Elias glanced at her. It's human, he said. We survive by working together, by trusting each other, by knowing someone will have your back when the world falls apart. She stopped walking, looking up at him for the first time in minutes. Her eyes, still shimmering from the remnants of fear and adrenaline, held a softness he had never seen before. Then I am human tonight? She asked, a faint, almost shy smile brushing her lips. You are more human than most of us ever realize, he said, with a small, reassuring nod. They walked in silence for a while, moving back toward his quarters. Steps were measured but unhurried, as if she were savoring each moment of freedom, each moment of vulnerability without fear of judgment. In this human's company, she had discovered something she had long forgotten. That strength was not measured by perfection, but by courage, trust, and the willingness to reveal one's true self. When they entered his room, the soft blue lights cast gentle shadows on the walls, and the small space seemed warmer than ever. Paused at the doorway, brushing her hair back from her shoulders. I thought I was prepared for everything, she whispered. Every battle, every political decision, every threat. And yet tonight I felt unprepared for something simple: trust, trusting another being without fear or expectation, trusting you. Elias leaned against the doorframe, watching her with quiet respect. It's not weakness, he said. It's proof of strength, stronger than any fleet or weapon. You faced danger, fear, and yourself, and still allowed someone to stand beside you. She closed her eyes, taking a slow, deep breath. For centuries, I have been alone in my strength, in my fear, in my role. But tonight, someone saw me as I am, and I was allowed to feel human again. Her words hung in the air, heavy and fragile. Elias understood that the queen before him had revealed more than anyone ever could have imagined. She had allowed herself to be human, vulnerable, and real, not because she had to, but because she chose to trust him. You changed something tonight, she said, opening her eyes, looking at him with a quiet intensity. Not just the guard, not just the station, but me. You reminded me that even a queen can rely on others, that even a ruler can be seen as a person first, not a symbol. Elias gave a small smile. Humans are strange that way. We show courage not by hiding weakness, but by sharing it, by letting someone else stand with us. You did the same tonight, and you did it beautifully. She let out a soft laugh, the tension in her shoulders finally easing. Beautifully, she repeated, almost to herself. I suppose even centuries of power cannot prepare a queen for the simple power of trust. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The room was quiet except for the faint hum of the station's life support systems. Finally sat on the edge of the bunk, her robe falling loosely around her, and looked at Elias with eyes that held gratitude, recognition, and something unspoken: connection. You have given me something precious, she whispered, voice barely audible. A reminder that even in the loneliness of command, even in the weight of centuries, one can find someone to share the load, to see the person beneath the crown. Elias stepped closer, careful to keep the moment respectful. You'll never be completely alone, he said gently. Not while people like me exist in the galaxy. Not while someone is willing to see the real you, not just the queen. Her shoulders relaxed for the first time in what felt like decades. She allowed herself a small, genuine smile. Then tonight, I will sleep knowing that perhaps, for once, I am not defined solely by power or fear. I am, and I am seen, and that is enough. Elias nodded, feeling the weight and beauty of her words. It was rare for a human to be part of something so profound, to witness a being of such history and legend embrace vulnerability and trust. And yet here he was, honored beyond measure. Outside the station, stars shimmered cold and distant, but inside that small room, the galaxy had shifted. The alien queen who had ruled through fear and perfection had rediscovered her humanity, and a human captain had been there to witness it. And in that quiet, fragile night, something new was born. A bond neither crown nor empire could touch, a bond forged by courage, trust, and the simple, undeniable strength of the human heart. The station had returned to its usual quiet hum, but the air in Elia's quarters felt different, warmer, lighter, almost alive. Queen stood near the doorway, her robe loose, her posture relaxed, but still carrying the quiet dignity that marked centuries of rule. For a being who had controlled empires and fleets, tonight had shown her a different kind of strength, the strength of trust, courage, and connection. She looked at Elia's, her four crystal-like eyes shimmering in the soft glow of the lamps. "Human," she whispered, voice low and intimate, "tonight you have protected me in ways I did not know I needed. You stayed, you listened, you allowed me to be myself." Elias leaned against the wall, trying to hide the warmth in his chest. "I didn't do anything special," he said. "I just stood beside you." Shook her head slightly, a small, almost shy smile on her lips. "You do not understand. Most see me as queen, the ruler of they fear me or they obey me. They never see me, not really." Her eyes softened. "But you saw me, and in seeing me, you made me feel human, not a ruler, not a symbol, just me." Elias took a step closer, careful to respect the space that the queen had given him. "You are more human than you think," he said. "It's not weakness to let someone stand with you, it's proof of strength." Considered his words, her gaze thoughtful. "Centuries of rule have taught me power, control, and endurance, but they did not teach me trust or the courage to rely on someone else." She paused, then looked down briefly, her voice softening. "Tonight, you taught me that lesson." The queen stepped closer, the faintest glimmer of vulnerability in her posture. "I knocked on your door expecting nothing. I expected a human to say no, or to hesitate, or to step back. Instead, you opened the door, and you stayed, and you did not judge me." Elias met her gaze steadily, because no one should be judged for being human, no matter how long they've ruled or how far their empire stretches. A quiet silence settled between them. In that stillness, both felt the gravity of the night, the trust, the fear, the courage, and the rare beauty of vulnerability shared between two beings from worlds apart. The galaxy outside could keep spinning, but inside this small room, everything had shifted. "You made me see something I had almost forgotten," said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "Even a queen, even one who rules the stars, can have someone beside her. Someone who does not fear her, does not demand perfection, does not measure her by her title." She let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "You reminded me I am not alone, not entirely." Elias smiled softly, feeling the truth in her words. "Humans are strange that way," he said. "We show courage not by hiding fear, but by sharing it, by standing with each other when the world is at its harshest. You did the same tonight. You faced danger, fear, and yourself, and you allowed me to be there." Her eyes glimmered, filled with something deeper than gratitude. "Then tonight, a human has done something no empire or council ever could," she said softly. "You have given me something precious, proof that trust, kindness, and courage can exist even in a galaxy ruled by power and fear." Elias felt a warmth in his chest he had never expected. "You don't have to thank me," he said. "We humans are good at standing together when it matters most, and tonight it mattered." Stepped closer, hesitant but deliberate, her voice softer than the hum of the station. "Perhaps," she whispered, "this is the beginning of something I have never known. Not a fleet, not an army, not a crown, but connection, trust, friendship, or perhaps something more." Elias nodded, his heart steady, his voice firm but gentle. "We'll see where it goes, but one thing is certain: you are seen, and you are never alone while I am here." The queen allowed herself a small, genuine smile, a rare thing for someone who had spent centuries balancing fear, respect, and duty. "Then tonight," she said, her voice full of quiet conviction, "I will sleep with a heart lighter than it has been in centuries, because a human stood beside me, because someone saw, not queen, and that is enough." The two of them stood for a moment, silent, letting the weight and warmth of the night settle around them. Outside, the stars continued to shine, indifferent yet beautiful. Inside, two beings, one human, one alien queen, had discovered something greater than empires or fleets: the courage to trust, the courage to feel, and the courage to be human. And as finally stepped into the small bed, leaving Elias by the doorway, both knew that the galaxy outside might never understand what had happened here, but it did not matter. Because in that quiet room, in that fragile, perfect night, something extraordinary had occurred. The alien queen had found her humanity again, and the human captain had proven that even one ordinary human could stand beside the greatest power in the galaxy and change everything. And that, in the end, was stronger than any empire.